Hello guys, welcome back to my series of breaking down After the Flash's code. This is part 2 of my 3-part series. I decided to make it 3 parts. So we're going to be going into this section and we're going to be focusing a lot more on the naming he used along with the syntax he used. These are important things for coding, so you want to be sure to pay attention. Let's just jump straight in then. Let's go to number 1. So this necessarily isn't coding related. I just wanted to bring this up because I was deeply confused. 484 items. I'm not sure what it's referencing. My theory is the number of attributes it contains. I don't like that. That's really bad. But I digress. We will ignore that. I don't actually know. I've never actually looked at that number before. I am merely taking an educated guess based on what I've observed with past coding behaviors. I typically don't look at the number of things attached to my instance, so I don't know. This is just an observation. Now let's get into the real juice of things. We got right here a module.gui button activated blah 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 blah. Let's start with just the obvious of what is this name? GUI button activated underscore toolbox frame toolbox visibility. Why? This is just awful in many ways. What I would have done is if we're really insistent about using a module to store these things, what I would have done instead is I would do local module equals this. I would, instead of having a big thing where I have to index every single item, I would do local GUI items, or sorry, we'll just do module.gui item should equal this. And then we'll do toolbox should equal this. Yes, this does consume a little more memory than what you would do if you just had this string. This, however, makes it easier to code, and honestly, that goes a long way, because it makes things more readable, and it makes it so more devs can help figure out what's going on for code, because they can at least reference other things. So we're going to go back here. So we see GUI button activated, toolbox frame, toggle visibility. So I'm going to guess. This is going to be some kind of icon to toggle the visibility of something. Kind of obviously, I know. But I digress. Let us head in. So we'll say that button A should equal nil. But we're going to set you as a GUI button. This is kind of ugly code. I'm doing it this way just so I can avoid type errors. Typically, you would have this not be nil and stuff, so you wouldn't have to do what I just did. But I'm doing it anyways just to avoid that type error. So we're going to move down now. And let's see what function we're looking at here. Function get GUI. Okay, so. You know, I'm willing to admit I made a mistake here. I misread this module function. Well, I was incorrect. I will admit that. It seems like I was incorrect about what I was looking at here. It seems like this is not something storing buttons. It seems like this is actually... Okay, I can see what this is now. Still, namesake, I don't like it. But I was incorrect. I will admit, I happen to be incorrect. What I still want to do here is I still want to change this function. So instead of... We're going to remove all this because I was incorrect. We're going to instead do function... In fact, actually, we're going to rework this. We're going to instead do, we'll go to our example module right here. We'll say, what if this is our GUI thing? So we're going to pop up on this image again, and we're going to do module dot toolbox visible. Now, we'll bring in, and I want module dot toolbox should equal require dot slash example module. And then we will do, in fact, if we were really interested in making it so the module things can reference themselves, we can actually do something kind of unique, where we can do for we'll actually instead change this to local toolbox should equal. Now for item in pairs toolbox I want module and since we're doing toolbox, we might actually change our string a bit to be toolbox underscore should equal item. Typically, I wouldn't want to do this. I would keep it modular, but since it seems like Chad has some kind of reason to want to keep these things compressed, we will respect that and we'll do this. So now what we can do is if we ever need references, we can do module, and then we'll remove this. We'll just set this to visible. We can now do module dot toolbox underscore visible. And boom. We could further support this by doing type module. Actually, you know what? Even better. I have a much greater idea. We'll do export type module should equal toolbox underscore visible. We can then do, when we return our module, we can assign a new type to it. So we'll go up the top, we're going to do type module should equal toolbox dot module. And then we'll just do module. And we could further expand this by saying if we have more than one module, we can do and boom! We now have access to all of these things, which would make our coding a lot easier. Currently, I don't have any other modules, so we're just going to remove this. But this right here will help condense our module down to much cleaner code. Necessarily, this is not directly related to the code. I just simply did it to showcase how it could have been done better. As we can also see here, we have game, the replicate storage, blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of curious what this success message thing is, because currently we are not returning anything from this value, so message is going to be nil unless this value has an error, which raises the question, why would this error? Could it be that the remote doesn't exist? Why are we indexing it then? These is why we need to store our events. We're going to reference episode 1. We're going to bring our events over. Since typically I'd want to store these, but I necessarily don't care. So we're just gonna grab all this code. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's very good. And boom. So now what we can do is we can actually set module dot events. And we're actually gonna change this to pass module itself. Okay. And what did oh yeah, I forgot you. Boom. So, what we'll do now is inside of here, we're going to change this, and we're going to set it to this. You could, in theory, store your types in another file. Not necessary. This is just, again, I wouldn't do it this way. I am just trying to stick with what Chad was doing here for his whole system. I would have just stored them in separate files, but since Chad was insistent on this, we're going to use this. So what we'll do now is we can then get our player event, or we'll create a new event now because it seems like there's an entirely different event for this. So, what is the event he's using? Update tool state. So we're just going to create another one. Tool state. And we're going to change you to tool state. So we'll then do self.events. Grab our name here. Because again, we don't have type checking because we're doing it like this. I don't like this, but it works for what we're doing since we want to try and remain somewhat close to it. And then we'll invoke our server. this works. It not my personal preference, but it works. And since we're passing the module itself, it means our submodule can access this module's things that are assigned to it. Let's go on to our next. Actually, let's see. Is there anything else we can do here? Again, with the same thing I've been referencing before, a lot of indexing. I don't like that he's re-indexing things all over again. I feel like he could have stored them, but we can ignore that for now. I don't like it, but I'm going to keep bringing it up because it's just not great practice. Let's go on to this. Now, I didn't preview all of these. We're going to be going... I'm sort of learning things about these with you guys. So let's look at this. Kit, model, primary object. Okay. Alrighty, we're getting into the next thing of why do we need all of these attributes? We could have stored these in tables. This number of attributes is going to be terrible on your game when loading. Same thing with the collection service. I get what he was going for here, but usually with collection service, it's a bit heavy on processing. I don't like it, but I don't care. It's up to personal preference. Let's see, what else we have? I don't know why he's creating a new module. Oh, I can see why now. Okay, he's creating a new model, which he's going to be using for his rig. Okay, you know what? I can get behind this. I can get behind a good namespace, storing things. Honestly, player character we can hear. Okay, you know what? I can get behind this. This is good programming. This right here is not bad programming. This right here is a good system. We have good, clean namespaces. We have... everything's good here. We're good with image 3. Let's go to image 4. This is where I start to lose it a bit. Let's start with the attach point ID. We're, again, getting attributes. This is getting old. We are going to reference this constantly of get attach point. Search HP. Why find first ancestor? There's going to be a lot of ancestors for you to find. It's better to try and find what we're looking for, and especially with one as a basic name like part. Not a big fan of that. Now we're going to do full ID, so equal, once again, we're getting our thing again. Woo! Get attachment point ID, local lang, okay. All of these things I'm not a big fan of. I don't get why we're finding first ancestor and having these such basic parts. I feel like we should store these things beforehand, but it works. Attach point set attribute. Okay. Let's move on to our next one. 5. This right here, I was kind of questioning. Why are we continually updating the max props variable and stuff every single time a player places something? Would we not just use an object on the client, and then on the server, we could store it as just a table? With the client, we can then check, hey, am I max props? If I am, send a request to server. And then on the server, we can just check the player's data table and see how many props they have placed. This is a bit weird. We'll reference some other things with it later. This is just a bit of an odd choice. Again, also, re-indexing, player info, store data, blah, 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 blah. Why are we re-indexing all this stuff again? I just don't like the name spacing on this one. That's it. That's the only reason I brought this image into here. I don't like how I did the names on them. This, I don't exactly know what's going on here. I'm assumption is this was just a template for the game, and I can understand why you would want to wait for children here. I feel like we could have had some kind of event holiday initializer to store all this stuff, but necessarily it's not needed for good programming. I just don't understand it all too much. This is awful! First of all, this makes it hell for any programmers who want to work with you. S_IC, S_RM, S_ blah 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 blah. Why? Again with the re-indexing, why are we not storing these variables and then cleaning them up when we're done? This is just so much processing. Because think about it like this. We have our first thing. We have to go to frame, button, edit image color, get attribute once again. Then we need to go to frame, button, next resample mode. Again, re-indexing. We could have stored button, whatever. And we'll do this again. Frame that position frame, frame that position frame, frame that position frame. You see the issue we're getting at here? We're continually having to re-enter these things when we could have stored them. It's stuff like this where it's like, you don't think it has a big impact, but on your game's larger scale, it's going to eventually start affecting things. Zone module. This right here, I captured the screenshot because I wanted to show how they're doing their module system. They're using a module called Zone Plus. I mean, they were, I'm not sure, I think so though. And then we have values to nullify. This seems like they are loading zones, and I think they're going to be cleaning them up later when the player is too far away. I don't know why it's declared locally. It works, though. It functions. So, who cares? If it functions, it functions. Let's see, I was just on image 9. Yes, I was. Okay, yep. So this, again, this is some awful name spacing. What I would have done here is, we see how we have dual stand move melee. Wait, why is he storing it like this? What? Huh? Wait, what? Okay, this is just awful. Okay. What we could have done here is we could have created a module.weapon registry. This is not directly toward to this module. We're just going to put it in here because we already have the file open. What we could have done here is we can reference common things. So, for example, we can have like a common registry. We can do common dot this, and we'll create it right now. Local common should equal this. We would actually have a value assigned to common, but we can ignore it because, again, this is just a template. So instead of having all of this, which is just awful, we'd break it into melee R handgun. So we'll now do melee R handgun. And we'll break it into several sections. We have crouch, stand, prone. So we'll just do crouch should equal stand should equal prone should equal. This does consume a little more memory as you're claiming more tables, but it just improves the readability of your code by a huge portion. So now, we don't need to include this underscore anim thing, because assuming this is just all animations, why would we need to store this? We can just do melee handgun, and then we'll do, assuming we use the table for storing other information, we can just do anim should equal this. Boom. We've already solved that issue of where we store those things. We're already making it cleaner to work with. So we can now do idle should equal string. If it shares an animation with something else, we can, instead of retyping that out, we can now do we'll go to stand. We'll just do idle should equal common dot idle. Boom. Now we can just reference that. This results in cleaner code. Yes, this does involve a bit of extra re-indexing because you have to find the values. But we can get around this by, instead of having to search the table for our value, we can do, on our player crouching, we can set our current animation mode to module.melee_handgun anim.crouch. We can then set our animation thing to this. So that way, we don't actually have to go into module.melee.handgun.anim.crouch. We don't have to do all that. We just need to hold our current animation state and what values need to be stored for that. This is just a lot of extra code that was not needed. Because obviously, you can reference your own custom things. That's fine. But it's best to have some kind of common. Because I do see here, there were some values that were shared among these animations, like handgun prone move, handgun prone move. We can just mix those into one and reference them via common. We'll now move on to number 11. Set zone module to dark. This right here, why are we checking all of these values? Assuming we are already knowing what's going to go on here, why are we checking type of value? Unless this is running on the server, which is odd that we're adjusting things on the server, but I digress. If we're coding this ourselves, we shouldn't need to be checking all of these values to make sure they're the exact right type. And I'm not actually sure why he's wrapping this inside of that. I don't get why he's wrapping it when it would just function. Whatever. Let's we're doing string.find bright. Wait, what? Why? Okay, so we're searching the string to find brightness or string to find ambient. This is just bizarre why we're doing it this way. Why are we searching a string? Why wouldn't we not just pass what we're doing or any other way? This is just bizarre on all kinds of levels. What I would have done instead is just pass a table or something controlling what values need to be changed. Required module origin that setting. But we're already storing settings. Why are we searching the string? Bizarre. I don't actually know. I frankly don't understand why he's doing it this way. Like, if we were to rewrite this, we could do function set zone dark module. And then we're passing our module. For setting in pair. Okay. So he's iterating the settings and stuff. Why not just do if module dot... we'll check ambient dot ambient. And what value is he checking ambient to be? Okay, so he's storing the original value. Why not just do, I now want module dot ambient should equal 0. Oh, I actually put if dot ambient should equal 0. We'll actually change you to test, just because I don't want to accidentally use the same names, because if I was writing actual code, I wouldn't want to use the same names multiple times, but since it's just a simple little explanation, it's whatever. And we'll just do test dot origin underscore, and then I'll probably... Yeah, no, we can just do it the other way I was going to do it. I don't know why I was trying to do it the other way. That was stupid. Ambient. And we're actually going to move you on top. Should equal test.ambient. Again, not an ideal way of doing things, but I can understand somewhat about it. Though iterating the settings is an odd choice. I don't know why we wouldn't just like modify them manually. It does create a bit longer of code, but this is just highly unreadable. I don't get it. I just don't get it, man. I really have been trying to understand what's going on here, but the more I look, the more I get confused by why he's doing things. Like with the module thing I pointed out earlier. He has these gigantic modules that do tons of things. I would just break it into multiple modules, which is why I did this stupid name thing. I don't get it. It confuses me on lots of levels why things are being done the way they're being done. I try to make sense of things, you know, trying to look at it from his perspective, like having these weird, crazy large module names and stuff. And having these crazy names for their files. And I just don't get it. You wouldn't need half this stuff if you had multiple modules of clean namespacing. Look at this. 111 I can't speak today. 11,000 lines of code. And you're naming things, these crazy long lines, when you could just as easily put it into a second module for toolbox-related functions, and possibly pass self. The use of attributes is bizarre, having all of these attributes the client needs to load. And probably half of them the client's never going to even use, assuming they're just server. It's bizarre the choices made here. Well, that is going to be ending today's episode. I will see you guys next time when I cover the final episode, where I'm going to dive into the worst of it. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time.